Good afternoon to you. Mark Stott of HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion Time. It is Friday the 9th of July 2021. I am back in the office after a very successful field operation down in Florida, even Georgia. We even have a couple of our partners that have cameras up in the Northeast, and we were able to track Elsa across literally thousands of miles. Pretty neat what we can do with technology these days. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit, where Elsa is now, what's going on with that, and its long and interesting legacy. And then, this little topic right there, La Nina coming back, that could have big implications, not only on the hurricane season, but the rest of the weather patterns across the world, this phenomenon called La Nina. Yep, we'll talk about that and more. First, check out the interactive tracking map off the HurricaneTrack Insider site. Elsa began over Africa here as a tropical wave many days ago, came all the way across, became a named storm out here in the main development region early, very early in the season for that. And then look at that track right through the Caribbean, and you can tell it's going around that subtropical ridge that sits out there. Big old high pressure dominating the Atlantic. This is an oversimplification of it. There's a lot of nuances, as you would imagine, but this is the general idea. It moves around the periphery of the big subtropical high, and now it is well on its way into the northwest Atlantic. It gave Long Island Sound some agitated conditions today, some rough seas over there. We had a camera. Well, here, I'll show you. Let me pop these up real quick, and I'll just show you what this looks like right now in Long Island. This is up in Baiting Hollow in New York, and it's calmed down considerably from where it was earlier. I don't have DVR capability on this to go back and show you, but I did tweet it earlier, so you can go and see it on Twitter. It was also on the Weather Channel. But yeah, you know, they had some tropical cyclone impacts up there in Long Island Sound. As this went across, the winds were funneling down the sound, and it was really able to pile up the water there on the bulkheads. You had some splash over, some minor beach erosion. Now, Elsa's going to go up through the Bay of Fundy and eventually impact this camera that a friend of ours has up in Nova Scotia. Looks nice up there now, kind of overcast, but yeah, Elsa is going to impact that area as well. So get ready. I mean, nothing major, but it's pretty remarkable, though. We zoom back out, the legacy of this system. It'll transition over to post-tropical up in the northern latitudes, and eventually that energy will head towards Iceland, but not as a tropical entity. No, not even close. It gets absorbed in the jet stream and whisks on out of there. One more thing I wanted to show you. This was really cool. Time-lapse video from the day before landfall from our camera that we set up in Horseshoe Beach down in Florida in the Big Bend area. This is sunrise on Tuesday, I think it was, because we set it up Monday night, Mike and I. So this is Tuesday, all day Tuesday. Sunrise comes up from the east, which is behind the camera, and the water is nice and calm for the most part. A little bit of wind ripples on there, people still boating. But watch what happens. You get this cloud deck that streams on in ahead of Elsa, and then you're going to see some cumulonimbus clouds build. There's a lot of science in video. There's a lot of data that can be extracted. Look at those rain streamers coming through. That's really neat to see. But watch what happens when you get these cumulonimbus towers come up. There they are. See how they get stretched immediately and they were blowing off? That's the shear. Even this far north, already when Elsa was approaching, you could see the shear in the atmosphere, that the convective towers, they didn't go straight up. They were going up and tilting. And you can see some more coming in here in just a minute. And that was a sign of the shear that was coming in the lower levels, mid-levels, not the lower levels, but the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Mid-level shear. Look, there it is right there. They're all blowing off like that. Really cool to see the atmosphere doing what it does. And even these ones that were trying to bubble later in the day, there's a nice squall that finally came in. They just weren't able to build vertically without getting tilted off. And that's what kept Elsa from becoming too intense. And that's a good thing because, you know, nobody needs that, especially in early July. All right, so what's happening out there right now? Well, here's Elsa, what's left of it, transitioning over to post-tropical. Still has a pretty good circulation system with it, a lot of energy. Again, we just have to marvel that it made that trip all the way across. I mean, wow. I know I keep rehashing it, but It's truly amazing. Anything else out there? And sadly, though, it does come with consequences. Do not mistake my enthusiasm for it and my interest in it, my fascination with it, that, it does come with consequences. We know of at least one person that was killed, maybe more than that. There were lots of traffic accidents because of the rainfall. There's all these residual impacts, and our fascination or disdain notwithstanding, some people absolutely hate this stuff and they're fearful of it, and they truly disdain it. They do. They're very woeful against it. And it doesn't matter if you're fascinated or you hate it, the hurricanes are going to do what they're going to do. I know that's not the proper grammar, but it doesn't matter what we think, how we feel. The weather is what the weather is, all right? So just making it clear, I don't cheer for these things, but they are really neat to see. And we just have to adapt and be ready and be knowledgeable. And part of that is looking out across the tropics. It is much drier out there right now. What do I mean by that? Because it's probably pretty humid. I was texting with Brent down here in the Virgin Islands just a little while ago. He's like, "Isn't dry down here." That's how Brent talks, sort of. That's my impersonation. But it's very humid, but we're in a suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. So when I say dry, I mean we don't have any deep convection down here. And this is pretty dry. This is a Saharan air layer punch, and you can really see it clearly there coming off Africa. And yes, the mid-levels of the atmosphere are drier. The relative humidity values are probably 30, 40%, something like that. They're certainly less than the 60 to 70% or higher that you need in the mid-levels to really juice things up. Even the intertropical convergence zone down here kind of dried out because we're in a down phase of activity. These cycles come and go, and we're just in a down cycle right now, and everybody should be happy about that. Meanwhile, we still have this pesky low-pressure system, surface trough, weak low-pressure area plaguing the Texas area, Texas Gulf Coast, and even inland. Yuck. You guys have really had a lot of rain over here. Any tropical cyclones that come over here in the next few weeks could be problematic. And nothing we can do about it except be ready. Can't stop them, but we have to be aware so we can take action. And knowing that the antecedent moisture is there, all that moisture is set up that we could have a major flood event if we get something coming in there later on. Again, it's part of being ready. You just have to, okay, we've had a lot of rain. I guess we better really be ready this time around. And believe me, the folks down there, Jeff Lindner over at Harris County Flood Control District, the different people at the Weather Service, Corpus and Brownsville, they know that it's all set up and primed. And here we are getting through July. We can take this quiet period and enjoy it. A visible satellite shot from weathernerds.org, weathernerds.org there of Elsa moving through New England. Of all places, I was just up in this region in January for a blizzard. It never did make it to blizzard, did it? Maybe a couple of areas. It's a big winter storm. It's like the biggest nor'easter of the season, and now a tropical cyclone is rolling through. I didn't have the energy or whatever to drive up there. But that's why we have the cameras. At least our buddy in Baiting Hollow with his cam and lots of other stuff on Twitter we're able to watch. But this is pretty rare, folks, for a cyclone like this to go up through the Gulf of Maine over here and into the Bay of Fundy. You know what's interesting and kind of ironic? Poor Jack Sillen is over in Bozeman, Montana, just hanging out there for the summer. And yet, if he had stayed in Maine, doesn't it just figure? Doesn't it? I'm going to have to tag him in this video. It's the way it goes, that he could have, I don't want to say enjoyed, but, he's a meteorologist. He understands this stuff just like I do. And he was in Bozeman, Montana, hanging out there, and he missed Elsa. It's the way it works, isn't it? All right, moving on to the topic that I teased in the thumbnail title card graphic thing. La Nina, possibly coming back. First of all, very quickly, what is La Nina? It is the opposite of El Nino, first of all. And what is an El Nino? An El Nino is the abnormal warming of the equatorial Pacific through a whole bunch of processes that we don't have time to go into today. El Nino typically means more moisture in the atmosphere across the Pacific, more energy, more storms in the Pacific region, especially the West Pac, less Atlantic hurricane activity because the air in the Pacific's rising and then it spreads out and sinks over the Atlantic. That's the simple way to describe it. You get a lot of wind shear during El Nino. El Ninos are typically negative for Atlantic hurricanes to develop. The opposite is generally true for La Nina. Colder than average in the Pacific, a cold anomaly relative to the long-term average, and so La Ninas tend to help promote Atlantic hurricanes, especially in the Caribbean, because of reduced wind shear. So this nice set of graphs that we see, bar graphs, showing the prediction from the probabilistic ENSO forecast, ENSO is El Nino Southern Oscillation. As we get to the peak of the hurricane season right here, El Nino is not happening. That's it's not 100% because it would be 0 on here. You know what I'm saying. It's not happening. Not happening. We're not having an El Nino. The odds of La Nina are increasing, and then they really go up by September, October, November, and by the time we get to winter, they're increasing more and more. And there's other guidance. The Euro is showing this to some extent, and it's and pretty major extent in its ensembles. Basically, the bottom line is those that watch this stuff from the Climate Prediction Center, the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia and elsewhere, Phil Klotzbach, Dr. Klotzbach at Colorado State, people that watch hurricane forecasts for seasonal activity, they pay attention to this because a reduction in heat content in the tropical Pacific makes the Atlantic more favorable for a number of reasons, and we're now seeing the prevalence of more La Nina, kind of a threat of it coming back, and as such, the Climate Prediction Center has issued a La Nina watch. There is such a thing, and they will monitor it. We will get reports monthly, a couple times a month, and we'll see how things progress. But it looks like we're going to double dip back towards La Nina because last year this region of the tropical Pacific was colder than normal, and now it's starting to get colder again. It warmed recently. This warmed up quite a bit from April through May into June, but now we're starting to see these areas of cold show up again and eat away at this warmth, while the Atlantic on the whole is fairly warm, especially in the different pockets of the main development region. It's not absurdly warm, it's not ridiculous, but there's enough warmth in the Atlantic countering what's going to happen in the Pacific that it should be a very busy season, and that is why people like Dr. Klotzbach and TSR, Tropical Storm Risk from over in London, that is a firm or an entity, whatever you call it, a private group that issues tropical cyclone forecasting for the seasons. Insurance industries really look at this information. It's important, but anyway, that's why they do it over in London, over, what is it, the University College London or something like that? I can't remember. But over here in the States, we have Dr. Klotzbach and CSU, which has done this more than 30 years. And I hear people say, well, they adjust it all the time. Well, that's what science is. There's never absolutes in science, except in math. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. But the whole idea of science is that it is evolving. And no, these are not excuses for, they just keep changing it and you're just saying it's science and that's an excuse. This is still relatively young. Think about it. Dr. Gray, Bill Gray, the late Bill Gray, and all of the predecessors at Colorado State and anybody else in the world that's putting legit effort into seasonal forecasting, we've really only been able to do this on a skillful level at all for maybe 3 decades. That's it. If you know science and geologic time, it's a snap of the finger. It's nothing. It's not even a snap of the finger. It's less than that. So you got to start somewhere. And the signs are there. We see them early on, usually March and April. And then we look, all of us that watch this stuff, we look and see how do things change. And every month, I think it's a good thing. I mean, you wanted to put a forecast out in April and just hope that it sticks? You got to revise this stuff, just like coaches do in the game. They don't put a starting 5 in the NBA or college basketball or 11 players out there in football, and that's it. Coaches make changes as the game goes on. Same thing in meteorology. I'm absolutely serious. So don't come at me with all this, they keep changing it. Well, of course they do, because that's friggin' science. I'm going to get a t-shirt that says that. All right, off my soapbox, the bottom line, 20 named storms forecast, so we've already had 5, so 15 more. Whew, lost track of time there a little bit. 8 more hurricanes, because we've already had 1 with Elsa. and we still have 4 intense hurricanes to go, or major hurricanes, with an ACE of about 160. We've already had, 12 or 13 ACE points. So a fairly busy overall season. Probably not as busy as last year, but there's a lot of impact in here that could happen depending on how things shake out. One of the ways we watch for that, this tweet from Ben Knoll today, the NMME, the North American Multi-Model Ensemble, last year, which we would all just presume forget about, versus this year in the peak season. MDR looks less busy. That's the main development region. See, it's drier there. I'll show you this more closely in a moment. But there could be more low latitude activity fueled by the Atlantic Nino. Oh, what is that? Well, there's this abnormal warming that seems to be going on right here in the Gulf of Guinea along the equatorial Atlantic region called the Atlantic Nino. And this helps to sort of drag the intertropical convergence zone more to the south. And so these tropical waves don't necessarily come off up here at a high latitude and recurve out to sea. Some of them still will, sure. But this helps to seed the Atlantic with more low latitude energy, and you can get more impacts that way because they don't have as good a chance of recurving out to sea. So the NMME showing last year versus this year, here's this year, sort of this dry look to the main development region. And I've already seen people questioning that, well, how could you have all of this favorability, a big hurricane season, and a dry main development region relative to the long-term average? Well, you turn to other scientists that are smart and they know how to make maps. It's really, really neat here. Eric Webb put this out. In the coming days, you'll be bombarded with forecasts of precip, velocity potential at 200 millibars, etc. for the peak of the season. Good time to see kind of how things are going. And basically, if we look out there, we can see that it's not a bad forecast overall, but the Atlantic MDR was too dry in the modeling versus what the reality is, and the intertropical convergence zone was a little bit too suppressed, a known bias. I don't remember what GCM stands for, my apologies. But we can just look and see, well, how have things been versus the reality? That was the forecast, this is the reality, and it's been a little bit wetter. So this is, don't look at that and think, well, that's what's going to happen. The overall idea is a very busy season is likely. It's not a guarantee. Nothing is, except, but we got to be ready no matter what, right? I mean, look at Elsa. There it is as I show you the modeling here to close things out. That blob of energy right there, that came from Africa. We saw that coming weeks out with different forecasts. The overall pattern we saw, we didn't know it would end up in New England weeks out, but we saw the pattern. The science is evolving, and we can see this stuff far in advance. So, anything out there? The old GFS crystal ball, if you will? Nope, not really. Elsa goes on up into the high latitudes there. And there's that energy I was telling you about. It just kind of gets absorbed in the westerlies, all of this energy up in the northern latitudes. And off it goes into the North Atlantic. And then we look and see, do we have any other areas down here? A tropical wave or piece of energy does come off west of the Canaries there, pretty high latitude for that one. But all in all, they're going to be low latitude, it looks like this year. And just going out over the next 10 days, there's really nothing out there. Oh, there's one system that forms in the Pacific. We'll look at that in a minute. About a week out. Subtropical ridge, nice and strong there in the Atlantic. You can see that sprawled out from Africa all the way over to Texas. And that's another sign that these waves, when they do come off, that they're going to make their way across and probably impact somebody from the islands and points west. Some will recurve, but this is the year where more could make it across. So there we are out to day 10. We rewind it, and you see, except for the Pacific, nothing to worry about in the Atlantic. We're going to be in a nice, quiet period. All right, so in the Pacific, 24, 48, 72, some energy down along the intertropical convergence zone here. Finally, it gets together south of the Central American Pacific side, and something tries to develop there at about day 5. A couple little entities out there, but that one takes shape, at least according to the GFS, and moves harmlessly out into the open waters of the Pacific. If that goes as shown from the GFS, that's a powerful hurricane right there in the model, no doubt about it. Will it happen? We will see. Kind of a little impulse down there that just gets going, a little bit of a, almost like a Central American gyre, just a larger envelope of rotation, and it closes off, but that's still almost 5 days out. We shall see. Bottom line, though, quiet coming up. We all need it. I got a lot of stuff I've got to work on, and, we got to be ready for later on. We got to save our energy for what is probably coming. All right? Real quick, want to thank everybody for following along on YouTube, social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc. during the Elsa field mission. We got to meet up with a few people down there, which was really nice. Even got to meet the fire chief. I've met him before, but I got to spend more time with him. Robert Robinson yesterday in Cedar Key. That was a real treat. We learned a lot about the area, even how to better set up stuff for the next time, because there will be a next time in beautiful Cedar Key. It's just the way it is down there. Hurricanes are part of the landscape, quite literally. So very successful. We deployed a lot of equipment, 10 camera systems, 1 full weather station. Got some good data out of it, good testing. Just kind of keeping things in tune, if you will. Practice. These are like exhibition games. I know it's not a game, but it's just an analogy. Come on. Social media these days, people will take stuff out of context, and maybe I'm too sensitive about it, but we do take it seriously, and that's why I went. It was nice to have my friend Mike Farrow helping, and we accomplished a great deal, so we're ready. All right? Have a great rest of your Friday, a great weekend. I will take the weekend off from doing video updates and work on other projects, but I'll still have the morning podcast, Hurricane Season, the podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. It's an audio briefing, and that's a lot easier to do because it's 3 or 4 minutes, and there's no graphics. And, so I get to be kind of lazy. But, yeah, I got to work on other things this weekend, and there's nothing brewing, so I will take a couple of days off from doing the videos. All right? You guys stay safe out there this weekend, wherever you may be, because I want you back. Without you, there's no reason for me. All right? I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching, as always. We'll pick it up again on Monday.